All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight, rounding out our final preview of the Broncos and Raiders' final game of the season. We talked about the offense. We talked about the defense. Let's go outside a little bit here. Let's talk about the coaching staff and what they're hoping to do and accomplish in this game. Because, Vic Fangio talked about it earlier this week. He said that one of the things they have to work on this offseason if this team is going to take steps forward is they have to, as a group, players and coaches, improve in a lot of areas. So if there's a wish you had for this game, for Fangio, for Shermer, even for Tom McMahon, I guess, on special teams, what do you want to see from those coaches?
Just a clean game across the board. I know that that's not the answer probably fans want, but just a clean game across the board, the show of promise. You look at, and we've seen it defensively over the last 5 games. Outside the Buffalo blowout, the 4 of the last 5 have been defensive masterpieces when you factor in what they're missing. If you go back and you look at the offensive side of the ball, you've seen improvement over those 4 or 5 games, but it's not quite there yet. I'd like to see them graduate from crawl to walk, in the crawl, walk, run phase that we talked about so often. On special teams, I'd like to see the coverage unit. That's my main buy. People talk about not getting returns and all that kind of stuff. To me, it's the coverage units that have been so bad. You got guys that are outside their lane. You got when are you on a kickoff where everybody pinches down and that leaves the lanes to the outside open? Are you trying to bait them into something, or is that just poor coaching or poor execution? I don't know the answer to that, but I want to see discipline on the coverage unit on special teams. I don't care if they get a 4 or 5 yard return. I don't want to see them house one because you took a bad lane. So if we had to pick one thing from each of those would be the things I'd want to see most.
Discipline's great. That's such a great word because I think that's the thing that almost jumps out every single time, especially on the defense and special teams, is discipline. Gap discipline when you're giving up big runs, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, same thing in the return game. And that's 100%. So I don't need Deontay Spencer to house one for me to say, all of a sudden I feel way better about Tom McMahon. But, hey, if he does have a good game, that'll obviously leave, I guess, a good taste in our mouth after the season about the return game. Maybe Deontay Spencer has a chance to prove something. Same thing there, as you mentioned, with blocking. You don't want to give up anything big, but maybe on the other side, when you're getting the ball on punt and kick returns, maybe you are seeing some good blocking there. So I think discipline is such a great word because that's the thing that jumps out to everybody, and you see the almost immediate reaction when guys are not doing the job they're supposed to be doing, and they're either freelancing or they're just not. They look they're not being coached correctly. That's the stuff that everybody kind of hangs their head on.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Most people focus on the offensive aspect of special teams, field goals, punt and kick returns, those kinds of things. But really, for me, it's more the defensive stuff. Coverage unit on punts and kicks is where I'm at with that stuff. So those are the things I would want to see from that side of the ball. I'm not sure that Tom McMahon will be back next year. His contract's up. We'll have to see on that. But I want to see improvement there either way.
No, definitely. Now, as far as Vic Fangio goes, from just an overall coaching perspective here, a lot of people focus on his in-game management. What have you thought about his in-game management so far this season?
I thought it's been pretty good. There are a lot of people that were complaining about things that I don't understand what it is they're complaining about. I think that there are a lot of people that actually don't know what they're seeing and are just used to seeing football one way, and so they comment on that. Like, Hot Take Radio Guy, when you were the first game of the season against the Titans, and everybody was whining about Vic Fangio not using those timeouts. It was actually the smart play. The reason that you don't use those timeouts there is you're forcing the Titans to continue to run the ball, which means they're going to settle for a field goal, right? And so what you do if you keep those timeouts is you guarantee, A, that the entire field is going to be accessible because you have a timeout to burn if you get stopped in the middle of the field, and B, that you're going to guarantee yourself 2 or 3 shots to get the ball down the field and into field goal range. That is a higher percentage play and strategy than taking the timeouts, hoping you get the stop, and then trying to work the ball 60 yards down the field to get a field goal with no timeouts in the middle of the field, wide, and the sidelines unavailable because they know that you can't go to the middle of the field and get down there and spike the ball because the offensive line can't get down there in time, and then you're going to bleed 12 seconds off the clock doing that. So, the idea that Vic Fangio doesn't know how to manage timeouts after being in the league for 40 years is stupid. And people who sit there and they tell you that he's done good clock management don't know what they're talking about. And that's the one bone I had to pick with him on a timeout usage was in the Steelers game this year. That was the one bone I had to pick with him on burning a timeout. The rest
and some of his decisions at midfield when he's thinking about a field goal, and then remember in the Atlanta game
it came back to bite him where he's doing that kind of stuff. Sure, if you want to talk about that one in first half, I've never had a second half issue with the timeout with Vic Fangio. I haven't, because I understand, and honestly, younger kids should understand it. If you've ever played Madden, That's the one thing you should be a clock management whiz. You can take those lessons and apply them. We always deride the people, the Madden player at home. But the reality is, if you've ever played Madden, you understand clock management. That's the one thing you should understand that applies to pro football.
Well, I think that we also, and I just encourage fans and media alike, to also recognize sometimes it's situational. Like after the fact, if it didn't work, then sure, you look, like you made a mistake. But, in the moment, maybe you decide to go one direction and it does work. Like we can sit and second guess. I think oftentimes Vic Fangio doesn't get the benefit of the doubt because he's really young in this position. He's not as young as a defensive coordinator. We know what his extensive history is, but as a head coach, it's only his second season. And sometimes it feels like people are either looking for the things that he's doing wrong so they can be proven that he shouldn't be a head coach, or they're looking for the things to be proven right because they want him to work out. I think in the end, just understand everything is its own specific example as long as you have an overall philosophy as a coach. And I think we're seeing that.
Some of it's ageism, too, though.
Yeah.
Because Vic Fangio is old, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on that timeout usage against Tennessee. If it had been Zach Taylor, everybody and their mother would have been praising the young guy for using a new strategy to try to save as much time and maximize the number of shots that his young quarterback could get to get them back in a field goal position.
Yeah, I'd like to see Vic Fangio have his guys ready for this game, because the last time they played the Raiders, they just got their doors blown off. So I'd like to have Vic Fangio get these guys riled up to go out there and compete and fight. I think they're going to, and I think we're going to see a little bit of a different setup than the last time these two teams played. All right, that does it for us. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for watching Broncos Country Tonight.